All right. Welcome back, and I'll talk slowly for a little bit to be sure that everyone has a chance to get back to their computer and do Laboratory 2. So as I'm talking on the site, I'm at the Blackboard site, and I did a little bit of work last night, and there's the programming notebook. I labeled these old. These are the ones that were originally there, but I've created a link to a separate web server that has the labs modified from these old ones. I think it'll be a little bit easier than to have to download them. And so that link is the one here that says Lab 2 Notebook. It's got a picture of the world on it and a paper-looking thing. And so if I take
So, Dr. Cleveland, do you want me to go over this one or the one that we already had?
They're almost the same. I'm going to go over the one that's here.
Okay.
I'm going to take a few minutes and then I will get out of the way.
Sure.
So if you were to take this link, it says Lab 2 Notebook, it should take you here. And there's the notebook right there. There's a PDF rendering of it so you can see what it looks like. So this is the Lab 2 on variables, naming rules, operators, arithmetic operations, data types, a little bit on integers and floats. There's the link back to the book. And expressions, some string manipulation, and then it finally gets down to the exercises. So things that are identified by exercise, that's stuff that you have to do. The other stuff is already there as a teaching tool. So for me to download it, I'm going to right click and save the link as. Now I've already done that, so it's here in my download list. So what I want to do now is go to CoCalc. I want this out of the way. Oh, Zoom, how I hate thee. Let me count the ways. There we go. I'm going to CoCalc, and I'm going to want to upload my Lab 2 notebook. And I'm done. And this will be a normal message if you take it off of my separate server, because I use a kernel called Python 38 that I built myself, but it's Python 3. Choose that, and we quickly run it, and we should get this. Now we know it's running on CoCalc, and then that's necessary for the formatting. So here's our Lab 2. Let me get this all nice and big. All right, nobody could follow me. Lab 2 notebook. Click on that deal. It brings up a server. Who's missing? Brings up a server. Looks like right here. The notebook is lab2.ipynb. There's a PDF rendering of it, just so you can get an idea what it looks like. Even has a solution here. The solution notebook should be forbidden. It is. You can look at my solution to Lab 2 if you want to. So that'll give you some guidance if you get stuck. But what we want to do is we want to download the Lab 2 notebook. So on my computer, it's right-click, Save Target As. Windows, same thing. You want to be sure you download it. If you just click on that, it's going to show you what's in the notebook. And that won't be very interesting. So I downloaded it to my computer, and then I went to CoCalc, and I uploaded the file to this directory. So that's where I am right now. So I'll wait a little while anyone that wants to catch up does catch up. Wow, it didn't delete the Lab 2. And then this preamble stuff at the top, that's strictly for me. You all can ignore that and you'll be fine. So I'm using that to identify what computer I'm actually running the notebook on. So it's telling me that it's on computer project E211BA85 and the username is user.
Professor?
Yes?
How do we upload it to a directory in CoCalc?
Well, you create the directory like we did in Lab 1, and then I just dragged the file into the directory. So there's
download the file again?
There's my directory. Oh, download the file again. Okay, let me destroy everything. Go ahead and do this completely legit. Delete. Go to my projects file. So I want to kill Lab 2. Now, how do I delete the whole? Oh, screw it. I'll just make a new project. Create a new project with a plus sign. Laboratory 2. Try it again. I'm going to put my name. Actually, I want to see if it'll clobber an existing one. So what am I calling it? Lab 2. There we go. What I'm attempting to do is clobber my existing Lab 2. I'm not sure if it'll allow that, but we'll know in a second. Hit create. Cool. So that's how you delete things. You just overwrite them. This should come up as a completely empty project. And it does. There's no files in it. And so now it's asking me to create or upload files. So it's now ready to take the notebook. We'll go back to Blackyboard. And I'm going to choose this Lab 2 notebook link. It says link to directory with Laboratory 2 notebook. Click it. Give it a second. And we're now at a very cryptic looking URL. So for anyone that wants to know, this is a light sale instance on Amazon Web Services that's running, and it has a little a little Apache server, and it's serving up a copy of the notebook. This will be faster than any network stuff on the university, so as long as I don't screw it up, this is a efficient way for all of y'all to get the data. Now I want to download this file. If I click on the file, I get to see the contents of it because that's how I have my Firefox set up. But if I choose right click, I get these options. Now this is on a Macintosh. There's got to be something similar in Windows. I've seen remember Windows used to say save target as. So what I want to do is I'm just going to save the link as. And it's going to give me an option to download it. In my case, it goes to my local downloads folder. I already have a copy there. It's going to ask me if I want to clobber it. I'm going to choose yes. And the file's now downloaded to my downloads folder. On the Macintosh, downloads folder is located in downloads, and there's the file. Yeah, I was being sloppy because in my Firefox implementation, it also produces a directory of recent downloads that you can drag and drop from. Okay, so now let's assume everybody's here. You have the file downloaded to your local machine. Now we'll go to our CoCalc account, and it's ready to take a file. And as Farang showed us last time, all we have to do is grab the file, drop it, and the miracle happens. And so the file is okay, something funny is happening with the machinery. Okay, there's everybody. That was weird. Do we have to save our answers in the download file? You could create it from scratch and Dane and try to do it that way. But I'll go through it this way. Okay, so then we have to turn on the kernel. And run those two things so it'll format right. Now we're in the lab. Okay, so first it has a discussion on variables. Variables and names given the data we want to store. And so you turn on a kernel, you click up here in the kernel deal, and you turn it on this way. So let me go through, let's see how everything is. How do you turn on the kernel again? Did that.
Can you do the kernel thing one more time, please?
Sure. You see my screen?
Yes.
Over here on the right is where the kernel information is stored. If you select it, it takes you to this page and you can choose the kernel. My current kernel is Python 3 system-wide. That's what I want to use. And we did that, but let me simulate downloading it again. So wait a second. Okay, so I don't have any files now. So to do download, I go to my local machine. I grab the file that I took from the Blackboard server or from the Amazon web server. Drop it there, and it's uploaded now to CoCalc. So I don't need that anymore. Then when I open the notebook, it's going to attempt to run it. It's going to attempt to run it. apparently doesn't understand what delete means, but I'll go ahead and open it, and we get this information. It says unknown kernel. Your notebook kernel Python 38 does not exist. A working kernel is required to evaluate the code. Please select one for the programming language you want to work with. We're going to select Python 3 system-wide because they're actually the same kernel. I just named it different. And now we're there. And what we can do then for fine, I'm going to just run all the cells, see what errors come up. And that'll give you all time to okay, this is a different version of Lab 1 than the one I'm showing. So this was obtained directly from Blackboard rather than from the AWS. And at least in this screen capture, doesn't seem to be any problem. All right, so to run all the cells, I just went to cell, run all, ran them. So I will actually gonna stumble forward now. It has some description of variables, what they are, why they're important. Here's an example of a variable assignment called time of concentration. Nothing interesting there. And then variable names can contain the letters lowercase a, lowercase z, cap A through z, numerals 0 through 9, and underscores. So here's a script that illustrates some variable names. So let's take a look at the script. We're going to create a variable called runtime. We'll set its value equal to 1. We'll create another variable called underscore to runtime. We'll set its value of 2. And we'll have runtime 2 equals 2. So let's go ahead and run this script. It's not a very interesting output. It'll produce the output of 1, 2, 2. So it got 1, 2, 2. Then it has an instruction. It says change to runtime equals 2 and rerun the script. So we'll remove that leading underscore. And do that, and we get the syntax error, invalid syntax. And that's because we can't start off with a 2. But we can start off with an underscore. So if we do that and rerun it, everything's happy. So moving on to operators, the equal sign is the assignment operator. And here's an example. We're going to assign to the variable x the value 5. We're going to assign to the variable y the value 10. We'll print the 2, so we'll get a 5 and then a 10. And then we're going to take the value of y and push it into x and then print again. And so what's going to happen is y and x will become equal. So when I run that cell, lo and behold, I get the 5 and 10 for the first part, and I get 10 and 10 for the second part. Now if we reverse the order of this operation, set x equal to y, what do you think the output's going to be?
5, 5.
Correct.
10. Oh, okay.
5, 5. Sure enough, 5, 5. Our next step is the arithmetic operators, and there's a table of them. And I have a set of the operations. X is equal to 10, y is equal to 5. And we'll print the two, and then we'll do x plus y, x minus y, x times y, x divided by y, x plus 1 integer divided by y, x plus 1 modulo y, and then x to the y. The plus 1 here is to get this integer division to function a particular way. There's nothing special about that. So if we run this, we find out that x is 10, y is 5, which is what we set it as. The sum of them is 15. The difference is 5. 5 times 10 is 50. And here's the cute part. This became a floating point number because of divide.
Excuse me, Dr. Cleveland. This has been becoming a recurring issue. Everybody, when you download the notebook, for some of you it downloads as a text file. All you need to do is just go to rename and remove the .txt file from the end of it. Because if you open it as a text file, it will not show you what Dr. Cleveland is showing.
That's good to know. I'm going to see if I can't turn this into a text file and replicate their problem, and then we'll go fix it. Okay, go to Files.
Thank you.
Okay, well, mine won't even let me download it as anything other than PDF.
You must be selecting the wrong file, because I
clicked on the top file and it will not let me download it no matter what I do.
You choose right click.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, let me try it in Windows. Let me see. Are you using Windows machine?
Yes, sir.
All right. This will take me a second. Windows. Where is it? Just wait while I get a Windows environment up and running. Oh, my poor computers. Okay. I think I want to use that one. Oh, you all can't hear it. The fans are going crazy. This room's going to get hot in a little bit.
Because it's a Mac.
No, because I'm running 2 complete operating systems simultaneously now.
True. 2 desktops.
2 complete machines, 2 virtual machines in 1 physical box. So it's poor little thing is going to be struggling. Yeah, everyone's watching this. So Danny, how do you download Windows on a Mac? You don't. You have to get a hypervisor. So one of them is VMware, the other one's Parallels. They cost about the same. It's like $100, $110 a year, although I know there's plenty of illegal copies floating around Texas Tech. And then once you have the hypervisor, you also have to get a Windows operating system. They're $110. And then you install it into the hypervisor, and you have a Windows environment like I have here. Okay, now I had a reason for doing that. Oh, I hope I don't regret this. And I'm attempting to, I'll probably regret using Edge. Farang, do you use Edge and do you hate it?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So I'm doing it, I think, because I have to. How do I get out of this crap? Continue without signing in. Yay! All right, I'm gonna take kind of a strange route to get to the same place.
Okay, I got mine figured out.
Oh, great. Well, I'll just do it all in Windows now because
Sorry.
actually I'm committed, but I'm curious to see what it's like.
On the naming section of the lab, or the naming rule section, are we supposed to run it incorrectly and then leave it like that? Or is it just for us to visually see?
The ones where I'm intentionally putting mistakes is so that you can see what that looks like, and then you should probably put it back to a...
Okay, I was just double checking, make sure I didn't do anything.
So I can barely see this because of my computer, but let me see what happens. So the way you would do this is, I think it's save link as. That's how you can actually download the file. I'm going to attempt that. And it should give me a browser window to put it in. And it looks like it does. And then stick it on the desktop. I think that's my Windows desktop. Should save. And then if I can figure out how to minimize that. So in Windows, you're going to be using Save Link As to download. And then from here, I would go to CoCalc and upload. I'm going to exit my Windows thing now. Actually, I'm going to do a complete exit because I want the computational resources back.
We thought you were here to stay. Stay with us.
I actually hate Windows even more than I hate a Macintosh. And I'm sorry about that. But there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's a perfectly adequate computing environment. So's Mac, so's Linux. After a while, you get comfortable with one at the exclusion of the other two. Okay, I can exit that, and I can quit Parallels. So for you Mac users, this is an aside. This has nothing to do with this class. But if you're a Macintosh owner and it's a relatively new one, say less than 3 years old, and you've got at least 12 gigabytes of RAM on board, so like a MacBook Pro or something, it's worth your time to go ahead and buy Parallels or VMware, the cheapest versions of each of those, and to buy a single Windows operating system, because you'll be able to do most of what you have to do in your time here at Texas Tech. There'll be a few things where it just won't work, and at that point you'll want to use the Citrix junk that we have on in the college. Okay, so here we are back to, well, that's somebody's screenshot, and we fixed it.
For that screenshot, just delete the TXT, just like Farhan said. When you rename it, and then it'll work. That was my problem for me.
And so you need to name it IPYNB, which means Interactive Python Notebook. That's what that file extension means. And what that's telling CoCalc or any Jupyter Lab interpreter is to interpret that file as a Python Jupyter notebook. If it's .txt, it interprets it as an ASCII file and just gives you a thing. I was going to attempt to rename it to see if I could replicate the error. So we'll change that to we'll change it to a .txt file and hit the rename. And now when I open it, I get what you were getting. So we'll go back, do that, rename it, bring it back to its correct name. And nothing happens. So the reason it's asking that particular question is the Jupyter thing produces things called IPYNB set checkpoints, so kind of intermediate stores, and so it goes back to those. So coming back down to about, I think I was about to do an arithmetic operator, so we just finished this one.
Can you do it again?
Do what again?
The last steps you were doing, because I couldn't follow since I didn't have my running.
Okay, well, we'll start from the naming rules. So this first script is to illustrate variable names. It's got 1, 2, 3 variables named. Actually, let me change that content. So this is going to print 1, 2, 3 when we run it. So it prints 1, 2, 3. Then it has a note to us, change the statement to 2 runtime equals 2. What that's really saying is take that underscore out of the front and see what happens. So what's going to happen when we run the script before I do it? Anyone suggest what will happen?
It's gonna fail.
It'll give us an exception. We have a syntax error. The syntax error is we have a variable that violates the naming rules. And so sure enough, a syntax error. We'll change it back to a workable syntax, rerun it, problem fixed. The next was assignment operators. And here we have variable x is set to 5, y is set to 10. And let's, when we print these two, it's going to give us x equals 5, y equals 10. Now we're going to assign the value of y into x. So y is equal to 10. If we push it into x, that makes x also equal to 10. And so when we print, instead of 5, 5, what do we get?
10, 10.
10, 10. Correct. Lo and behold, we got it. And then if we rerun it back, we'll get it back to 5, 5. Moving on to arithmetic operators. Here's a set of operators where x is 10, y is 5. We print the two, we add them together, we subtract them, we multiply them, we divide them, we integer divide, modulo function, and then exponentiate. So when we run that, the most interesting thing to me is that one. The division automatically creates a floating point result. And we can look at that more in this set of expressions. This function called type, if we use the function type and then we put a variable name in it, it will return what kind of variable that is. So here we have x equal to 1, and then we're going to use the plus equal operator, which is the same as x equals x plus 2. So 2 and 1 is 3. It's going to put a 3 into x, but the type of x is unchanged. And then we'll do it where x is equal to 1, and we do a x minus equal 2, which is the same as x equals x minus 2. And then we'll do multiplication, and then we'll do a division. And you'll see that the type coming back is going to be integer until we perform division, and then the type gets changed to float. So when we run that, it says the first print is what's in x. Well, it's 1 plus 2, so it has a 3. It's type integer. The second one is what's in x. It's 1 minus 2, which is minus 1, and it's an integer. The third print comes back. Which is x times 1 times 3, which is 3, and it's an integer. And then the fourth one comes back, which is 10 divided by 2, which produces 5, but it produces 5 and it's converted to a float. So that's pretty interesting behavior. Let's solve some problems right now. Let's see if that only leaves the link open. Okay, so the Blackboard problem is solved because you all should not be able to access anything except that link now. Back to CoCalc. And moving on down to the different data types. So if we go to the textbook, it has the data types in the Data 8 textbook. So there's numbers. Shows a bunch of them there. There's floats. Shows a bunch of them there. Then there's strings. Discusses some string methods and comparisons. So literally sections 3 and 4 are the subject of today's lesson in laboratory. Get back to CoCalc. So it has an example of integers, floats, and strings, and then a series of variable type examples. So here we're going to have a variable called my phone number. It has just an integer in it. My mass in kilos, my name, my cat's name. You'll notice double quotes and single quotes in this instance are going to produce the same result. My mass in kilos. Question for everybody. That statement right there. What type of variable is my mass? Is Dusty mass in kilos in this instance?
Floating.
String. Good. Correct. And then we'll print all this out. And here's an example of a string method right there. So it's going to convert the contents of my cat name concatenated with my name concatenated with Dusty mass in kilos into all uppercase. So we run that example, and so it says what my name is, says what my mass is, returns a phone number, returns my cat's name, and then just a print statement about concatenation. So here's concatenating my cat name plus my name plus Dusty mass in kilos. And so there's what the result of that string concatenation is. It just smushes all the string values together.
Do we need to change the information there, or can we just leave it like that?
And then if we convert it all to uppercase, it does that. If for some reason we want spaces, we could actually explicitly put the space in. Rerun it. Hopefully I didn't break it. And now we get the spaces. There's some other there's other string function ways to explicitly put spaces in without having to do it one at a time. We can change variable types. That's called typecasting. And there's 3 typecasting functions: integer, float, and string. And what the function names do is they'll take the contents of the function and convert it, if it can, into the variable type. So integer returns integer, float returns a float, string returns a string. And there's also the type function, which we've already briefly seen, which will tell you what the type of the variable is. And that's sometimes quite handy when you're having troubles. You can get the variable type and find out if that's the cause of the troubles. So here we're creating 3 variables: my integer 234, my float 876.543, and my string what is your name question mark. Not very interesting. When we print those 3, we'll get the contents back, and then we're going to print the integer as a float. So essentially we're going to float the integer and see what it does. Then we'll take the float variable, print it as an integer. We'll take the integer variable, print it as a string. And then I was getting fancy here, we'll do integer as a hexadecimal, which isn't of any consequence right now. And finally, we'll use the type function to find out what type my integer is. So if we run that, we get the expected output. It returns the variable contents. So if we take the integer, convert it to float, and print it, we get 234.0. If we take the float, 876.543, convert it to integer and print it, we just get the integer portion, the 876. If we take the integer as a string, we get 234. If we take integer as hex, well, don't worry about that. And when we do the integer type, it tells us that the integer is an integer. So there's that example. Now here's an expression, one of many. This is used to do the precedence of operations. So what that expression is doing in my attempt to do it in words is it says, into the object named x1, place the result of integer 7 plus integer 6 divided by integer 2, which equals float 3, times integer 3, which equals float 9, minus integer 1, which equals float 8, and then result of that last one, integer 7 plus float 8 is float 15. That's what's going on in that expression. And the division operation by default produces a result unless we use integer division. And so the result is a variable x1 with a float value of 15. So we can test that conjecture by running the example. Sure enough, it's, oh, I did integer divide here. Let's go to float divide. We get a float of 15. If we do a proper integer division, however, we'll get an integer result. Then we have some simple string manipulation. So here's this one. It says, change the cell below to a code cell and run the script. So how do you change it to a code cell?
You click the where it says raw, the drop down. And you
Choose code, correct. Run it, and it ran, so it gets upworld 5, 3 plus 2, Dusty 5, my name, my number. And now it says, answer the following questions. What's the difference between print 3 plus 2 and print single quote 3 plus 2? Once you decide what you think the difference is, put it here in this answer block, which it's currently showing as raw. You'll probably want to turn that to a markdown. Then question 2, what's the difference between print my name, my number, and print literal my name, literal my number? Write your answer here. And the last one is change my number equals 3 plus 2 to my number equals 3 plus 2.0. Rerun the script, state what happens, and put the answer here into the question 3 answer spot. Then exercise 2 is on variable types, and so you're asked to create a simple script that illustrates integer, floating point, string, and Boolean. And the way to do it would be to make some variables and assign values to them, and use the names below, and then print the results. And you can put your answer right there and run it. Exercise 3 are arithmetic expressions. So do your best to evaluate these by hand, and then put your by hand answers in these markdown cells. Then write a script and evaluate the results. The way you build that script, you just go ahead and create the 3 expressions, and then print the 3 expressions type and value. And then the next exercise is an example of simple input and output. You want to get 2 floating point numbers, store them on the variable names float and 2, 1 and 2, print the output, and then check whether one's greater than or equal to the other. And you can write your script right there. As an option, you could put it into the online Python compiler, run the results, see if they're the same. You'll discover that they are. And then the last one, exercise 5, we have some string named computational thinking. And what we want to do is index and print all elements from positions 2 to 10. And here's a fragment of code that could do that. You would assign to the value begin a 2, assign to the value n a 10, and then print some string begin to end. And then you want to try to print the portion of the string that spells think. And here we're being kind of sloppy about it. You're going to use beginning and ending to find that portion. So the way to find that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So position 14, I think 14 to 18 will pull out the word think. And that is your lab 2. At this point, I am going to hand ownership of what's left of the meeting to Farang and let him work you through it. Once I remember how to do that. I go there, choose more.
Yeah, in the list of the participants, you can just...
Right. Okay. You are now host. I will be listening in and moving around a little bit. I'm going to turn my video off. If you need to get a hold of me, do so.
Okay. So, since I was following the chat box, I think there's still 1 or 2 of you who are having issues with the notebook. What you need to do is to go to the Blackboard folder that is called Laboratory 2, if that is in Lesson 2. Open the Lab 2 notebook directory, and from the list of files, right-click on lab2.ipynb and make sure that you save that file. It doesn't matter if it downloads it with an additional .txt at the end. Don't worry about it yet. Make sure that you download it. Then come to your list of files in cocount.com. Just bring that file that you downloaded in, and if you want to rename it, you can just click on this little square here, then click on rename, and if you're seeing something like this, make sure that you are removing this part. Chat box. Where is my chat box? Okay, I just got my chat box. Yes, Osvaldo just uploaded the lab2.ipynb file, which is the right one, to the chat box. Thank you very much, Osvaldo. So, once you do that, make sure that you remove the .txt if you have it, and rename your file and open your notebook. Dr. Cleveland has already covered the initial parts of this notebook. Let me know if you have any questions from the beginning of this until where we get to this part that reads simple string manipulation. If you have any questions on this part, let me know. Okay. As I see no questions, we can...
For the exercise 1, all we had to do was change the cell to code, correct?
For exercise 1, you are 3 questions based on the script that is given to you. And you will do those little changes, and whatever result you get will help you to answer question 1, question 2, and question 3. For example, it is asking you what is the difference between printing 3 plus 2 and printing quote 3 plus 2 quote. Generally, when you use the quotation mark, it will just print whatever is inside those. It doesn't really go and try to interpret what is the meaning of that. So when you run this, let me run it and show you. I want to run this as code. So when you run this, in the second line you see 5, which means that it is adding 3 and 2 and printing the outcome for you. But in the third line you see just 3 plus 2, and that's because you're using the quotation mark. And it's just giving you whatever is inside that. So let me have a look at the chat box. I used what Osvaldo sent and it doesn't look like that. Jacob, can you unmute yourself and tell me what is the difference?
I don't really know what the difference is. It's just like I don't see the same thing.
So when you open the file that Osvaldo sent, this is not the top portion of your notebook?
No. Mine starts with Introduction to Python, lecture lesson for variables, operators, expressions.
That's okay. Did you try downloading the file yourself?
Yes.
So did that work for you?
Yeah, the download and upload is fine. It's just like when I open IPYNB and Python and CoCalc, it just doesn't show up as what I've seen in y'all screens.
No, forget about the file that Osvaldo sent us. Did you yourself go to the directory from the Blackboard and download the file that Dr. Cleveland was talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Did you manage to upload that into your list of files in CoCalc?
Yes.
Okay. Did you manage to open that?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you open that, you still do not see what we're seeing?
Yeah. It's been the same thing.
Okay. So you can see the same thing. That's what we want. That's where we want you to be. So let me look. What else? You have the question. Do we keep the answer boxes as raw or change them to Markdown? You can do both. If I were you, I would probably change them to Markdown so that I can stylize my text the way I want. Yeah, Rami has already answered and said change them. How do we save it as a text file again? Grace, can you unmute yourself?
Hello.
Right. Yeah. Grace, what are you asking? What do you want to save as text file?
The lab 2.
The what?
The lab 2.
Okay. The file that you have downloaded might be saved as a text file, but you don't want that. So if you already can see lab2.ipynb, you are good. In case you see a .txt addition at the end, you need to go into your call calc and rename it and remove that part. If you don't have it, you're good. You don't want to add that. That is not a good thing. Okay? If you had any more questions, just let me know in the chat box or unmute yourself. So, inside the answer boxes, do you want us to explain the difference or print both of them inside the answer? No, we actually want you to explain it. You do not need to write a whole page or paragraph. Just explain the differences as simple as you see them. You have to select the kernel, I think, yes. If it asks you for the kernel, you're going to choose Python 3 system-wide. And, okay, Grace is also good. Okay, so, do you have any questions with exercise 1?
No.
What is the reason for adding 0.0 at the end? Because when you do that, it will be read not as an integer, but as a float. So let me actually show you something here. If I come here and click add, you don't have to do it. You can just look at what I'm doing. So if I say my object A is equal to 2, and my object B is equal to 2.0, and I run them, print A and print B, it will just print them out for me. But if I add type A and type B, because I want to see the class of these objects, type A will be an integer, but B will be a float. And that is because of how I am assigning them to my objects. Whose question was that? Cody. Cody, was that a good enough answer for you? Okay. So, is there any other questions with exercise 1, or shall we move on?
I believe that's okay.
Okay.
So basically, number 2 would be the same thing as number 1, honestly, because it's just my name and just adding the number from there.
You mean question 2 in exercise 1?
Yeah, it would basically just be this almost the same thing as number 1, because it just has those little.
Yes, it is. It is again emphasizing on the impact of quotation marks.
Okay.
So let's go to exercise 2 now. you are being asked to create a simple script that illustrates the following type of variables: integer, floating point, string, and boolean. So basically what you need to do in this part is to fill in the right-hand side of these and get the right format for each one. So if I want to do this, sorry, I will probably just go ahead and say, okay, string underline theory could be equal to something that I will put in a quotation mark. Let's say 5. Then for an integer similar to what we just observed, I can just say 2. 2 is too repetitive. Let's go with 7. Then for a floating point, I will go with 7.0. And for Boolean, I can go with true. Now, this will be what is being asked in part 1. Now, if I run and make sure that this is being run in code, because you're using, you're assigning values to objects. In the second part, you're being asked to print the type and contents of each variable. So, you can either do that in the same cell or add another cell. That doesn't really make any difference. So if I want to, yeah, go ahead.
Or so like you chose like any integer. Do we choose whatever we want as well?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that is kind of one way to make you have your own custom-made notebook. So for example, if we do this, it will tell me the class and then the content of my string underline theory object. And if I do the same thing with my integer type, it will again tell me the class of my integer underline type object and then its content. You will do that for the 4 objects that you created in part 1, and that will be the outcome or the results of your exercise 2. Let me know if you have any questions about this part. How do you add one of those boxes? You can just come and click on this little plus sign here, and it will add a cell below wherever you are. So if I'm in this cell in line 9 and I click on it, it will add one right below there. But if I'm selected in here, then it will add one right below there. So it really looks at where your cursor is and adds one cell right below that. How do you delete a cell? I add any. That is pretty easy. So one way that I usually use, and it's not exactly the best way, is that I just click on that cell and I click on the scissors up there. It doesn't delete it per se, it cuts it and allows you to paste it somewhere else. But since I'm just removing it, I just delete it and do not paste it anywhere. Something else that you can do is that you can just come to Edit and click on Delete Cells. Both of them will do exactly the same thing. Maria, did you get your answer? Okay, well.
My print type doesn't work like my second cell. Oh. Well, it says traceback most recent name error.
Have you run your string underline theory object?
I just ran it. Well, actually, yeah, I just ran it and it still says the same thing. Name error.
Can you make sure that the spelling of what you have here is exactly the same as you have here?
Oh, single T. Oops.
Did it work?
Yeah, it worked. Yeah,
Okay.
I missed a T at the string.
So, no, don't worry about it.
Thank you.
The thing is, this is an example that I usually use when I'm working with students or friends with coding, is that generally machines and programming languages is very similar to dealing with a very, very powerful genie that doesn't understand your language. So you need to come up with ways to communicate with this genie, and when you're able to do that, it will help you in
Oh, also it's case sensitive, like with true.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on with my true statement? It's not defined, and then it's not capitalized.
Yeah, it can be very, very specific about how you name your variables. That's why when you get to a stage that you need to write longer scripts, it is always suggested that you be very specific and very careful with your namings and be consistent throughout the code. So one character being lowercase, uppercase, that can mess up the entire thing.
Wow, sounds fun.
It will. You will get the hang of it. Don't worry about it. Okay. Look at the chat box. Yeah.
My exercise 2 box is throwing an error. It says create a simple script that illustrates the following types of variables.
Okay, so you are running this Markdown cell and you have no problem, right?
Which one?
This entire thing. When you click on it, this is a Markdown cell. Can you run that and see the
I have it
text
as code, so I think that's probably why. Okay, yeah, it works. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Danny says mine keeps saying error run.
I did. It was no issue, and then I started typing out my second cell, and then that's when the name error came up for both.
Okay, so, I see. So let me see. I want you to go ahead and remove the line 2, 3, and 4 from your first cell. So you will only have a string underline theory equal to a name or just a string. Okay?
Yeah.
If you run it, nothing will happen, correct?
Yeah, it's just string theory. Yeah, that exactly what you have.
Okay. Now, go to the second cell and remove the second sentence. Just have print, all lowercase, open parentheses, type, all lowercase, open parentheses, string underline theory, close parentheses, comma, string underline theory, close parentheses.
Okay.
Now run it and tell me what happens.
Okay, it says class. Yeah, it's that.
So there was some kind of a spelling mistake somewhere, but there are times that it is hard to catch them. So you can just go line by line and check where that is happening.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's see what is happening for exercise 2. Is it supposed to be Markdown or code? Philip, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I put it as Markdown or code, and I got it to work.
Okay, so generally, whenever you are doing something that is programming and not just writing, you need it to be code. If you want to assign values to objects, if you want to run functions like print, like type, you need to be in code mode, okay?
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah. Hunter, my print type is giving me an error. Hunter, unmute yourself and tell me what's happening. Hunter.
Okay, sorry about that. So what I have right now is I was trying to do my string theory and print type, and I copied and pasted exactly what it says right in exercise 2. It's giving me an error.
Okay,
I deleted some. Oh.
Go ahead.
I deleted part 2, 3, and 4 because that's what you told that other person to do. And right now I just have string underscore theory equals, in parentheses, Hunter, and then right below it I have
parentheses
the print
or in quotation marks?
Quotation, that's what I meant.
Okay.
And then I put the print type string theory, I just copied and pasted that, and it's saying name error, trace back most recent call last.
Okay, so
saying
tell
that's the
me,
name string.
A string underline theory, you have all that in lowercase, right?
Yes, I just copied and pasted it.
Your print and your type are all in lowercase.
Yeah.
You have exactly what I have here.
Yeah, I'll just copy and paste what I have.
Always check back.
Okay, yeah, if that doesn't solve the problem and you're still having that, just stay after the lab and we will have a look at it from your screen, okay?
Okay.
So, I will go to exercise 3 right away. Tina, I don't know what you're doing wrong because I don't know what issue you're having. Can you unmute yourself and tell me about it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wait, okay, so in string theory, I didn't put my name, but I put something else. I put, all caps ENGR 1330. So I wanted to see, like, if that would...
Quotation mark?
Yeah, in quotation mark.
It doesn't matter what you put in the quotation mark as long as both sides have a quotation mark.
Yeah, I tried doing that, but I don't know, like, it wouldn't read for me. So I just tried switching it to my name, and it works now.
So, what I can tell you is that all that matters is that how you spell this, and then that you put it exactly in the same way into the next line. Because right now, if I, instead of firing, it's an ENGR 1330, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens on my computer. See, it is again giving me the class, which is a string, and the content, which is ENGR 1330. The left-hand side is the part that is very important when you are running code. So this name, the name of this object should be identical to what you type here.
Okay, thanks.
So, guys, I'm getting 35 messages, and that is just too much. I'm not sure if you're talking to each other or if you're talking to me. But if you have any more questions about exercise 1 or 2, you can stay after the lab and we will go over them. Let us go to exercise 3, which you're asked to calculate the expressions below by hand, taking care to keep track of result type, integer or float. You will just work on these, and you will assign a value to a variable using the names above. So, do you have any questions about exercise 3? Maximus says yes. Is it with me? If you have a question, unmute yourself and shoot.
Can you hear me? Oh.
Yes, I can.
Oh, so when it means by hand, are we supposed to just put in the answer, or what are we supposed to do for X1, X2?
Well, actually, I think what Dr. Cleveland meant was for you to just double-click here and answer, and put in your answer that you have calculated here. If you do that, that will be fine. If you want to be cooler, I would suggest that you do these calculations on a piece of paper, take a photo with your cell phone, and embed that photo in your notebook, just like what we did last session. I would say that is a way cooler way to go with it. But otherwise, you can just double-click on here and put in your answer, double-click on here and put in your answer. What did the little percent sign mean? You can just go up in the same notebook, and there is a chart here that has the symbol, the meaning, and an example. So I think, Cody, that will be what you want. Okay. Yeah. So I think you're good with exercise 3 as well. Let's move on to exercise 4. Simple input-output. Get 2 floating point numbers via the input function and store them under the variable names float1 and float2, and then print float1 and print float2 to the output screen. Then check whether float1 is greater than or equal to float2. So, Abdul is asking, for exercise 3, on the results box, it says x1, x3, and x3. Yeah, that's just a mistake. You can go with x1, x2, and x3. That is just a typo, I guess. And then, Liana, the first x3 should be, yes, exactly. If we're done, we can leave. Brandon, the lab goes on according to the schedule until 10:50. But if you want, you can leave. If you have any, if there's anyone there, if you want to ask more questions or review something about Lab 1 or what we covered today, I will be staying, and you can ask your questions. So.
Okay, just one more question for exercise 3. When it says one assigning a value to a variable, do we use these equations it gives us, or do we make our own equations here?
I think you are supposed to use the same equations.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, just to be consistent.
In exercise 4, do we make up our own floats, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is completely your call. So,
on exercise 4, can I just use an if statement to find whether it's greater than or equal to?
Well, Since what you're suggesting is very cool, I don't want to cross it out, but I would suggest that you do that as like an additional cell or like an alternative. So do what is asked here. You're just basically asking for one float and then the second float and one logical statement that says whether 1 is greater than or equal to 2. The answer for that will be true or false. Keep that. Then below that, you can add another cell and do whatever cool idea that you have and keep that in your notebook as well. So let's go to exercise 5. Oh, and yes, thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Dr. Cleveland just reminded me that the video will stop at 10:50. So for those of you who will stay and ask questions, that part will not be recorded. Thank you very much. Exercise 5, or your last exercise, you're basically playing around with a string, and the content of that string is computational thinking. If you have any questions about exercise 5, let me know. Cruz, my office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. You can find the link in your mailbox, but feel free to email me anytime that you have a question. I will try to reply to those emails as soon as possible.
I got a question about exercise 5.
Go ahead.
For the beginning and end, what would we put there in the question marks?
So, generally, what is happening in this little piece of script here is that you are defining a number for where you want to begin, and you're defining a number for where you want to end. The question is asking you to index and print all the elements from index position 2 to 10. That will give you an idea of what value you need to put in the right-hand side of these first 2 lines, and then when you run the print, you will get your output. Just remember that in Python, the first place in the string is indexed with number 0. So if I look at position 0, I will look at C, and then 1, 2, 3, so on.
Okay, so we can put in any like couple of words in there that we want.
You can put any numbers in there because in the third line, you're asking your notebook to print from what position to which position of the object that you defined.
Okay.
Was that clear?
Pretty clear.
Okay. You're welcome, Liam. Guys, do you have any questions on exercise 5? Cool.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the print, and you like select the indexes. Does it not include the last index? I'm assuming.
Yes, that is the trick that you need to have in mind when you are defining the begin and end here.
So it starts on the one you put in, and it includes that one, but the last one, the index of the in, is not included.
If you go back to the video that Dr. Cleveland has recorded of his lecture, in the slide when he is talking about the string part, he goes over that of that part and answers your question. But yes, generally the trick with the last part is that if you want the 10th position to be included, you will go to 11.
Okay.
Okay, Esteban. Okay, you want an example on exercise 5? Okay, so let's define an object. The name of the object is some underline string, and the content is computational thinking. Let me just run that. Nothing will happen because I'm just simply assigning a content to an object. Then, on this part, we are going to set up the beginning and ending of the part that we want to take out. I will answer questions about exercise 4 right after this. So let's say I want to go from 0 to 5. Okay? So I want to begin at position 0 and I want it until position 5. If I run it, it will give me COMPU, which if I want to start counting will be position 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you notice, when I set up my value for ending, I mean until that position and not including that position. Okay? So it will start from where you begin, and it will go for as many steps as you want. And that was an example for that. So those who asked for it, Simi, Esteban, was that helpful, or do you have any other questions about it? Okay, cool. Braden asks if you are supposed to upload a PDF again. Yes, exactly as what we did last session. You will go, once you're done with your notebook and you think everything is good, you will go to File, you will go to Download as PDF via LaTeX, and you take the same steps and export a PDF, save that PDF on your own hard drive, and then submit that on Blackboard. Okay. Liana is asking a question about exercise 4. For exercise 4 to print float 1 and float 2, can you just type, actually, let me show you. So, if here I have float 1 equal to 4.2, float 2 equal to 3.5, and then I say print float 1 and float 2, let's see what happens. Ta-da! So I think that answered your question, Liana.
Could you please show us how to embed an image one more time, please?
Yes. So.
Thank you.
If you remember what we did last time, embedding a photo or an image into your notebook is a two-step process. In the first step, you need to come to your project folder where you have all your stuff, and you upload that image either as a JPEG or as a PNG. And once you do that, you will just go to your notebook, for example, this is what I had, and you will use a command like this, which basically goes exclamation point, open, close brackets, then in parentheses, you have to put the name of your image with its format, which is in this case .png, and that needs to be identical to the name and formatting that you see in your project folder. And then when you run that, it will work. Make sure that the cell that you're doing this in is a Markdown cell.
I have a question on number 5 on the example on 5.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I run the program, it doesn't give me anything.
What do you mean?